Hawaii. Home to a rich culture, history, and the titular folkloric character of this video, Maui. The legends of Maui characterize his feats, going based on Polynesian tradition, detail his many misadventures. Maui's life can be summarized with these core events that are commonly agreed on by all islands of Hawaii. The mysterious birth, placement of the heavens, the acquisition of fire, the rising of the islands, the imprisonment of the sun, his rescuing of his mother, wife, and himself, as well as his death. The first telling of the story is briefly recounted in the Kumalipo, the creation story of the Polynesian people. Now keep in mind before we dive in, this entire text is incredibly metaphorical and is used as a ritualistic chant to show, in this case, Maui's dominion over the world and sea during his time alive. The 15th era of the Kumalipo goes into the miraculous birth of Maui, wherein his mother, the demigoddess Hinaakeahi, puts on a loincloth to the man Akalana. This spawns a divine magic light from Hinaakeahi, which became Maui without any proper father. This brought about the anger of Hina's two brothers who fought with Maui, quickly learning his newfound strength, but at the same time causing him to bleed for the very first time. This is the beginning of a ritual for him as he then gathers sacred awa leaves from the gods Kane and Kanaloa, removing the stems of the awa, gathering sacred bamboo of Kane and Kanaloa, taking the items to an oven and setting them there. The era continues in detail about how Maui cried to his mother wondering where his father was, to which she kind of just distracts him by telling him to go fish because then he'd find his famous fish hook, Manaya Kalani, with which he'd unite Hawaii. Apparently, that's all I needed to hear since he sprang into action, grabbing a feather off his mother's bird as bait, ran to the shores, and immediately caught Pamoe, a royal fish of the sea, as well as his children who were all eaten by Maui aside from their fins or tails. In this moment, Maui demonstrated his power of the sea by eating the primordial royal fish, Pamoe. Meanwhile, while he was away, Hina was busy being dragged away by Pieapie, and Maui went back to save his mother. It then briefly goes on to state that Maui decided to fight the sun and out of sheer hubris, endowed his dominion even over that of all origin of life, which went down in history for the islands of Hawaii as legends were spread all throughout following his death. And that's about where the Kumalipo ends. No presence of his raising up the skies, no stealing of the fire, and it doesn't even mention embracing the Hawaiian Islands. So what gives? From here a divergence in the island Maui occurs as different legends and folklore were passed down between West and East Maui. Beginning with Eastern Maui, it begins all the same with Hinaakeahi putting on a man's loincloth. This time, Akalana is directly noted as her husband. At which point, Maui is born and Akalana yells out how their new lord has arrived. We then see our first big divergence in story as Maui goes on to travel to Waianae and the island of Oahu, where Hina teaches him to catch mud hens for their use of fire. He first caught one, but it deceived him in telling the secret behind fire as a result of tea leaf and taro stalk, giving a reason behind hollow ones as Maui rubbed them together to get fire. The humans must have thought weirdly of the boy who was digging around in the mud with vegetables expecting something to happen. After nothing worked, Maui, powered by rage, grabbed the same hen with great force and it folded under the immense pressure, revealing the secrets of fire having to do with the tree Waimi. Maui acquired his fire! However, he wasn't quite done with the hen for its trickery, and marked it with the red streak on the head before letting it run away. This is where the next divergence in story occurs, as now Maui is said to have been fishing with his brothers in the area of Po'o, and with his hook Manakalani, he catches something and pulls at it until 2 days later they finally bring it up to the surface of the ocean and reveal it is the giant fish Pamoa from before. And he warned his brothers to not look back, at which point they turn around and go, "What?" And the line broke and Pamoa swam back under, explaining why the islands of Hawaii are not one landmass. Now, we can already see some distinction here between the Kumalipo and here as Maui originally eats Pamoe, as well as his children, but here he is portrayed as a fish as large as islands that Maui can barely fish up. The next distinction comes in the form of Maui capturing the sun. For you see, later on, Maui was just chilling until Hina tasked him with stopping the sun from moving so fast, so that her clothes would dry faster. Anyways, he went to a willy willy tree to find his poor blind grandmother who he made help him by stealing her food that she was cooking and saying he'd keep taking if she didn't help. He then sat nearby a tree before capturing the sun with his lasso, before demanding it move slower, to which both the sun and Maui reasoned that it would move slow in the summer months and fast in the winter months. So after that completely fair trade deal with nobody held at gunpoint, Maui left and had one more realm to conquer. The final distinction in myth comes in the form of Maui, who one day decided that he needed a wife. So he noticed that the sky was getting in the way of everything, and told her an innuendo saying that if she pushed up the sky that he would let him. Now obviously this worked, and Maui immediately just pushed up the sky like he was changing a light bulb and went on to... Moving right along. Now, obviously, we can already see some great distinctions here in Maui's legends. Some of Maui's greatest achievements are left out of the eastern Maui legends from the Kumalipo and replaced by even more fantastical tales explaining natural phenomena. I think this explains the natural human occurrence of as something becoming part of a culture, people assume it was always around to explain the parts of the world that already existed at that point. As history becomes legend, the real story becomes jaded or lost to time. And people ascribe fantastical traits to describe something that is at one point more down to earth. Moving right along, we come over to the Western Maui account of the legends. Over in Western Maui, it accounts as Maui being born the son of Hinalauai and Hina, living just over Kahakalua. Before he was born, some random men we don't even get the names of are said to have seen a child doing a sick, gnarly backflip off of a cliff into the ocean, meaning that obviously a magician is about to be born. I mean, it's so obvious, how could you not tell? Haven't you read all the prophecies? So then this is directly followed by his snaring of the sun, which gives some more detail as to the inner workings of the story, showing that there are newer retellings, as the details have all been thought out, like Hina drying her bark cloth, as well as Maui ensnaring the sun with a cord of coconut fiber. However, a popular telling of the myth in this region explains how, as Maui was in the process of just utterly bullying the sun, a man named Moi Moi was just absolutely heckling him on the side, and once Maui was finished, he chased him down to northern Lanai and transformed him into a rock as punishment. So I guess Maui was just a historical Mike Tyson? From here, the folklore shares another part of the original common legends of Maui and its first appearance to the rescue of Maui. For you see, as Maui was out getting the sun to slow down, his mom birthed an owl child and Maui was taken prisoner to be sacrificed, wherein Hina and her new child devised a plan to get him out. From there, the folklore well kinda dries up, and in our search narrows to the island Kauai, where they describe his birth with Hina dreaming of surfing with a man, and so she packs up her bags and sails to Wailua to find Makali'i, the man of her dreams who returns to her after she births all her children. The canoe she took to the island got left and became the first coconut tree of the island, with which Maui used to climb to visit Makali'i as he was from the sky. Maui then decided to take up an incredibly difficult and arguably his most difficult feat. Maui was to bring the Hawaiian Islands into one single landmass just as before, however, instead this time being achieved if he caught the fish Luehu. The only issue with his plan was that some alai birds heard of his plan and immediately ratted him out to Luehu. Probably for stealing their fire, but that is one heck of a grudge to hold. Maui then takes the canoe just as before, but this time has to look out for the alai birds, watching his every move and with the help of Hina makes an afterimage to distract them while he puts to sea with his brothers. Just as before, they catch the fish of epic proportions and his brothers look back, but this time he brought a bucket which fell out and in turn transformed into a gorgeous damsel, which everyone turned to look at, unfortunately letting Luehu go. Moving right along, we come across the region of Hilo, Hawaii, and most of the retellings are kept the same aside from Maui's rescuing of Hina. So while he was out capturing the sun, weirdly enough the god of agriculture, Lono Kaiho, decided to attempt becoming the husband of Hina, and when his advances are denied, he went in for the classic drown them until they're dead method, works every time. Hina then screamed for Maui, at which point he wrapped up his deal with the sun and threw a snare onto Lono Kaiho, turning him into a rock. Now, this is clearly different from the earlier tellings of the story and how instead of the bat creature Pie Pie, it's Lono Kaiho. But even in this same region, there are tellings of it being an ale named Kuna who stole her away. All we can say is that Hina is definitely hot prada among the beings of Hawaii. The next deviations of our beloved trickster comes from Waianae over on Oahu, where coincidentally enough, Maui is said to have lived exactly in this region, which is quite interesting and reminds me of a certain other region of the world, but you know what, we can let this slide. Anyways, his birth is the same as that of the Kumalipa, with him springing out from the divine light of his mother. The legends move right along to his fishing misadventures as Maui hoped to unite the islands as usual, getting sent to the being Palai Nui Ahina, giving Maui the word of advice that to do this he needed to use his hook on Unihokahi, or in other words, the thing where all creation derived from in Polynesian mythos. So yeah, it might be a bit hard to do this task. Maui went out with his brothers in their canoe and picked up a bucket outside the canoe, and just as before, it transformed into an enchanting woman. This time, however, it's before they hook up the primordial Unihokahi that she travels along with them and actually was the one to accomplish hooking Unihokahi by communicating to it that they were debating how many teeth it had, and they could settle it now that it was right in front of them. Now, you'd assume that the sea monster wouldn't be the most reasonable creature, but it opened its mouth with no qualms, to which they immediately hooked it and took off. Maui's brothers immediately took off and once more told him to not look back before shouting, "What?" and breaking the tether. With this retelling, we see some interesting elements as the fish changes from Pomoa, a simple really big fish originally, to capturing the primordial physical start of the universe. We can also see the explicit start of his trickery here in folklore as before. He's always just kind of brute forced everything, but when faced with creation itself, Maui couldn't match his maker in strength alone. So on another day, Maui's out fishing again, and when he returns with his spoils, he looks off to see, is it a bird? Is it a plane? Nope, it's a giant bat taking off with your wife, Maui. Silly Billy. In this case, instead of just snaring the bat and being done with it today, Maui couldn't catch up and he got sent by his mother, who I assume just rushed all of this as Kumalama was actively flying off, to Kuolokele, his grandfather. They first saw a man with a crooked back, and instead of me, it was just some random guy, and I think Maui might have thought he was a monster, as his first intuition was, throw a stone at the man. But then he sorted that out by fixing the guy's back and being on his merry way. Arriving to Kuolokele's house, he showed Maui to make a kite that he could ride with, which he did to get to the far-off land of Moanahila, where he saw the village of the Pie and landed ashore. Pie, as chief told his men, or bats, to bring the bird inside for further investigation before taking a power nap, and Maui cut off his head and drained his eyes as well as flying off with Kumalama. A job well done. His tale gets cut short as he went on to live in Hilo over on Hawaii before becoming infamous for messing with people. This did him the most wrong when he attempted stealing from Kane and Kanaloa, which they immediately spot and kill him on sight, with his blood coloring the shrimp red, and a rainbow is said to have become of the rest of his blood. And that's where that ends. Now this is obviously very dark given the fact that before this, Maui was the guy. He was the one who conquered the sun, who beat every monster that came his way, and nearly united the Hawaiian Islands by tricking Unity itself into bending to his will. But why, when simply doing a task like stealing, does he die so quickly? For this, you need to understand the context behind all of this. Kane and Kanaloa in Polynesian mythology are not to be trifled with. Being the divine representations of the sun, sky, dawn, creation, and procreation on one hand, and on the other hand being linked with the afterlife, destruction, the deep sea, and also squid, respectively. Wait, squid? I did not know that one. But regardless, as you can very clearly see, these deities were not ones to be messed with. It also shows how Maui was completely out of his dimension, because instead of some fierce conflict occurring with the tragic death of Maui being the end of it, the man gets one shot and the story ends. However, it also ties into the overarching themes of what Maui is meant to represent as a character, because remember, this is their religion and culture, not just stories. Maui was to them what humans could achieve together, conquering the seas, creating civilization, and not succumbing to the creatures of the night. Maui was and still is a symbol as to what humans could do at the time of the telling, which is why I think we can see so many more additions as time goes on over the islands. He starts out in the Kumalipo performing arguably minor tasks. He performs ritual to higher gods, eats a really big fish, and lasses the sun, which in our day would be quite the feat because we know what it is, but to the Polynesian people and just people of the past, the sun leaves for nearly half a day every day. It's a small orb off in the distance that creates light, and even when it's dark the temperature is still moderate, at least in Hawaii. Even in the next retellings, the whole sun being needed is kind of put off to the side. Why would humans need the light of the sun if they had the moon or even the light of the fire that Maui stole for his people? Maui's retellings show the dawn of a civilization blooming and growing into something great. With every retelling, the new amazing legend is added to the story of Maui saving the day. The only issue left for the people was that of the separation intrinsically present in their culture. They were and still are a collection of islands you need to navigate to even find getting to and from each other. And no matter how much Maui tried, he wasn't able to unite them even with unity itself at the end of his fishhook. However, people were able to accomplish something their hero couldn't. By traveling island to island, spreading the word of a legendary man who defied the creatures of the night and the heavens themselves, they united the islands through culture, not land. Even if each retelling was slightly different than the last. With the Hawaiian people ready to spread to all of Polynesia, just like Maui, the Maui cycle was miraculously born. As you can tell by getting this far into the video, Maui's legends were not all exactly how you say consistent. However, in spite of that, they kept in the knowledge of what made Maui Maui and added on. A mysterious birth, the changing of the sky, the rescuing of someone from some monster, and finally, what has been present in each tale, the intense desire to unite the Hawaiian Islands. And although it may seem as though just hearing the myths of his day, he was unable to accomplish this, going beyond legend, this is the one thing that without a doubt, ever since he was first mentioned in the Kumalipo, he managed to do.